Hey, everybody, welcome into another episode of the Flyover League. Jamie Plunkett here alongside Noah Darling, recapping the penultimate regular season weekend in college baseball. It's my favorite week of the year just because I get to say the word penultimate. Noah.
You are a wordsmith. Sometimes you have to show off that. I assume you have a journalism degree, Jamie. I would hope so, given your sort of wordsmithing that you do on a regular basis. But that is a fun word to whip out. I remember one of the first times I heard it was from a friend of mine who's not exactly in the scoring high in the literacy column, and he was using it incorrectly, and that went down a whole road. But I'm glad to hear you use it correctly, and that's just the kind of guy you are. So credit to you. No end of season jitters for you. You're ready to go.
Listen, I didn't I didn't pay a lot of money to go to TCU's Schieffer College of Communication to use words badly. I got the biggest words, I got the best words, and we use them on a daily basis, Noah.
I think use words badly is a is a bad sentence.
Yeah, but see, then you're just being facetious, right?
Okay.
So,
It's the
anyways,
school for kids who can't read good.
that's right, and who wanted to learn to do other things good too. But it's got to be way bigger than this.
It's a
Can't
school
be
for
this.
ants.
It's just got to be at least 3 times this big. Yes, this is the Flyover League. We're a little delirious here on this Monday, heading into the final week of the regular season, because we've got so much to talk about. We've got a Big 12 title race that maybe we didn't anticipate a couple weeks ago, or even as recently as the last time we gathered for this podcast. We've got a couple tiebreakers to discuss about who's going to be seated where in the Big 12 tournament. We've got a whole slate of regular season finale series coming up on Thursday. And we've got some conversation about a letter that the NCAA sent out to a bunch of coaches about where some Big 12 teams might be on the bubble and just who in the Big 12 really truly deserves to host a regional this year. We're going to get into all of that right now. But let's start, Noah, with the NCAA. I believe it was Jordan Banfield, the head coach at Cal State Bakersfield, tweeted out earlier on Monday a screenshot of a letter, a memorandum, if you will, from the NCAA that reads as follows. Subject, regular season game cancellations. On behalf of the NCAA Division I Baseball Oversight Committee Championship Subcommittee, I want to let you know that we are concerned with the practice of canceling regular season games for reasons other than inclement weather. It is not the intent or the spirit of the game to adjust scheduled games in an attempt to strategically impact selection data or metrics. As you are aware, when selecting teams for the championship subcommittee weighs all the available data and the complete body of work. The subcommittee has kept and will continue to keep a watchful eye on teams' schedules and any known reasons for any cancellation. During the subcommittee's subjective evaluation of teams, games canceled to avoid the impact of mathematical metrics will be discussed and could have a negative impact on the subcommittee's evaluation of the team. Best of luck to you and your institution for the rest of the college baseball season. That is from Michael Alford, the chair of the NCAA Division I Baseball Oversight Committee. In layman's terms, don't cancel games for RPI reasons, you bums, is basically what the NCAA is telling coaches, which is a bit ironic, don't you think, Noah?
It's the product of a flawed system. On the surface, nobody in the world wants to see baseball games canceled in any capacity. Nobody is saying, yes, less baseball is a good thing, except I think Anthony Rizzo said that a few years ago as a Cardinal fan. That stood out to me. But again, nobody not making millions of dollars is saying, let's play less baseball. But when the NCAA primarily uses RPI, a system that rewards teams for on its surface playing a quality schedule and winning games, on the other end of the surface, it punishes teams for beating poor teams. And that sounds ridiculous because it is ridiculous. There are other formulas being used, DSR, one of them. I don't know the full ins and outs of that, but it's their first year involved with the NCAA tournament process. I think the softball folks are saying that didn't really matter much at all with DSR in terms of RPI and other things that the softball committee considered, but we'll see how things change in a month. But either way, when teams can have the option of playing a game and winning it is good, but metrically, as the committee uses, you will fall in RPI if you win that game. Or if you lose the game, you'll fall even more, which it should be the case. but you shouldn't be falling for winning a game. Now, if you schedule a cupcake and a team ranked behind you beats a good team, yeah, you should fall behind that other team because they scheduled tough. But the system rewards or doesn't reward playing games, so why would you play games? So on its surface, again, nobody wants games canceled, but the current system in place says you should probably cancel this game.
It's crazy how much weather we have in May that allows teams to use the inclement weather excuse. And now there have been other situations of this year where weather has truly been a reason. We joked a couple weeks ago about Texas Tech and OU canceling their matchup in Frisco. And I think I said on the podcast, "Oh yeah, big bad weather's coming through," and then big bad weather actually did come through DFW that week. So they were paying much closer attention to the forecast than I certainly was that week. But we saw Kentucky cancel a midweek game today that was scheduled for tomorrow, and they came out and they said, we are canceling this because basically we had a really long weekend, we had some travel problems, and we've got another game on Thursday that's really important. So we're going to try and set up our student athletes to, be best prepared for Thursday, and that means we're not going to play on Tuesday. I think that's really the kind of stuff that the NCAA is avoiding here. But to your point, why are we scheduling that game? If we know that we're going to get into May and we're going to maybe have some problems with some of our midweeks, because everybody knows midweeks aren't necessarily the cream of the crop when it comes to competition, why are we scheduling that game? I will note that there are some schools that have just stopped scheduling midweek games for the last couple of weeks of the regular season. TCU did that this year. They haven't had a midweek game in 2 weeks at this point.
Cincinnati in the same
Cincinnati
boat.
has done the same thing. We're going to talk about the situation that those two teams find themselves in from a Big 12 standings point as well. But those are two teams that have really tried to curate their, tournament resumes over the last few weeks. And the fact that they don't have some anchor midweek games on their resume is probably helping them out quite a bit right now. Now, do we want more teams to stop scheduling midweek games in May so we have less baseball? No, of course not. But like you said, the system is set up such that it's to the team's benefit to not play as much baseball right now, which is counterintuitive.
There's a flip side to it too. It's not just power teams being impacted by the potential cancellation of midweeks, for better or for worse. It's how does Mercer build their resume in the SoCon? What does that look like for them there? I think they're number 34 in RPI. What's their real ceiling if they can't go and play? I don't even know if they played Georgia at any point this year. If they can't go play Georgia Tech, maybe they win those games. Maybe they're looking a lot better in the NCAA tournament, and we can get the weeds on that. But either way, it's a broken system. RPI in general is, and this feels like another feather in that hat. It's very divisive on Twitter right now, Jamie. I don't know if you've seen both sides of it. At first, I thought everybody was in agreement. Boo, NCAA, you're bad. You set up a poor system, and you're mad that people tried to find their way out. But now I'm seeing some people that are saying, yes, thank you. Let's stop canceling games. As I said to start this off, I see both sides, but I also see the reason that teams are canceling games. It's not just to avoid playing. It's literally hurts you to step on the field. And until that's fixed, I don't know what the NCAA can really do about it, which leads to the next question. They send out this scary letter. We're not fond of this. What are they really going to do about it? Who's going to lose hosting ability? Who's going to drop from a 2 to a 3? Who's going to miss the tournament altogether, if anybody, because they didn't play Bethune Cookman on a Tuesday? No offense on a Tuesday. No offense to UCF. That's just who I thought of first. Like, what's the real consequence here? Just the letter?
Well, Lord knows that a Kentucky or an LSU or an Auburn won't be the ones that suffer those consequences, but a Cincinnati very well could be, or a UCF very well could be, saying, "Oh well, you were kind of on that 2-3 line. You canceled this game against Bethune Cookman, so we're going to give someone else that last 2 seed, and you're going to be a 3 seed now in the." I don't know, name one of the 10 SEC regionals that we're going to have this year, right? So it's definitely an interesting situation, one to monitor. I think the crowd, the not anti-RPI crowd, but the crowd that's critical of the RPI and understands that maybe there's a need for some adjustment is getting loud enough now to where the NCAA is hearing it. Yeah, we've seen changes like you just mentioned with softball. Basketball has introduced the net in recent years as well. We've seen the NCAA and selection committees adjust to some of the criticisms of their selection process in the past. And I think we're starting to come to a point where we might be in store for that with baseball as well. They've also made some really good adjustments, I think, coming into this year with the way that they're going to announce their the 16 seeds, with the way that they're going to announce, with the way that they've talked about organizing regional hosts and how they're grouping twos together and threes together to place teams a little bit more accordingly. Right. I think some of the strategy that they're using is going in the right direction. But the base metric that they use to determine whether teams get in or are left out is still pretty antiquated at this point, or at least not giving many teams a fair shake.
Well, one of my favorite hours of the college baseball calendar is on, I believe it's on Media Day at the College World Series. There's the State of College Baseball press conference, and college baseball doesn't have a commissioner. I wish, on paper, I wish we did. It's probably better that we don't. I don't know what the operating body really looks like, whether it's just the chair making these statements like he did today with the letter, or whether it's, forget his name, Anthony something at the NCAA that's also pulling some strings. But either way, there's about 5 guys set up on a table that are able to answer questions about the state of college baseball. And over the years, it's grown more and more in attendance of who's in that room asking questions. And it feels like this is going to be question number 1 is RPI. You sent out this letter. What are we actually going to do about it? It comes up every year, but this one, it feels like you might lead off with that. So I see that momentum that you're feeling as well.
When it comes to the Big 12 specifically, with where we see teams kind of located and situated right now on the bubble, as we kind of narrow the focus of the conversation here, I'm going to give you a list of 5 teams, and you just tell me, correction, I'm going to give you 6 teams. You just tell me what you think about their current state as far as the bubble is concerned. We're going to start with TCU.
TCU is as bubbly as it gets in my eyes. The sweep of Utah helps. I'm sure we'll get into that shortly, but we mentioned it as a must sweep last week, and they did must sweep. They did. I'm going to assume that you're going to mention another team that's right there with them, so I won't mention them by name. But it won't come as a devil of a surprise if they compare very similarly to another team in the Big 12 in terms of if there's a last 4 in. I think they're both in it right now. So I would put TCU still in that huge danger zone, and we'll see what they look like in Morgantown this weekend.
Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State is a team that is all of a sudden nearing the hosting conversation. I don't think they have that ceiling. Maybe if they win the Big 12 tournament. But then you have to ask yourself, we do this every year in every sport, Jamie. How much does the Big 12 tournament, how much does any conference tournament actually mean? It seems to change every year. I'm choosing to say that it means absolutely nothing at this point until I'm proven otherwise. So we'll see how they look against Arizona. That's a series they should sweep. I don't know if they have the juice to host, but at minimum, a 2 seed that nobody wants to see.
Cincinnati's
always been a, pardon the pun, a darling of the metric category. Very high RPI all year long, even when they had a losing conference record. And their schedule hasn't been that tough as of late, but either way, they're winning games. I would say that they're safely in the 2 seed category right now, but you'll see them near that hosting conversation, maybe a tick behind Oklahoma State, but then you go back to their series and remember that Oklahoma State really put the shellacking on Cincinnati, and you go, okay, there's your edge. So I'd put them right in the middle of that 2-pack.
The team you were referencing earlier, Arizona State.
The Sun Devils are also very bubbly, and I hate that for ASU because nobody wants to see Arizona State in their regional, but you also said the same thing about the Sun Devils last season. It's kind of just who they've become at this point. The pattern is they can't really get over a hump because their RPI doesn't help them too much. I would prefer them in the tournament over TCU if you had to tell me to pick one, strictly because they're a top 25 team across the board. They've been that way all year. They have maybe the Golden Spikes winner, but they got to win a few more games. And I don't know. They really have Omaha potential if they put it together. It's a very annoying team.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine an NCAA tournament without Landon Harrison and Cole Carlone in it. Yeah. That just makes no sense to me.
I'll tell you what, Jamie, the fans. Yeah. Where were the fans? There were no fans behind home plate.
Listen, man, it was 105 degrees in Tempe on Sunday afternoon, and good Good shout out to, I believe it was George Lund, one of the student reporters out there in Tempe that does a great job covering Arizona State. I think he tweeted out a couple photos of all the people just crammed in under the shaded areas of of the stadium of Phoenix Municipal. What a ridiculous thing! What a ridiculous thing to complain about on a day where it was 105. Oh yeah, but look, there were so many fans in Fayetteville this weekend. Yeah, man, it was 68 degrees and cloudy. Well, there were so many fans in Fort Worth at the TCU game. Yeah, man, it was 75 degrees and cloudy. It was 105 degrees and sunny in Tempe. You're literally in the stadium is in the desert. It's actively in the desert. I was there 2 months ago. You drive through desert to get to that stadium. And you know, by the way, I looked it up. They had 3,700 people there on Friday night and Saturday night.
Yeah.
Packed stadium. Both games
Great
were on
crowds.
ESPN2. Great crowds, right? Anywho, ridiculous thing. Back to the topic at hand, though, about, well, if you can't imagine a tournament without Landon Harrison and Cole Carlone, you might have to start imagining a tournament without a guy like D. Kennedy, because I don't think, and I would love to hear from you, I don't think Kansas State's going to make it. 10-17 in the Big 12 right now just isn't going to cut it.
No, it's not going to cut it. Their best case scenario is 13-17 in the regular season. That's unlikely as they head to Orlando this weekend. You're not going to go 3-0 there, you would think. Just a team that has sputtered the last 3 weeks and really all season long, ever since that Arizona State series when they were, I think they might have been playing for first in the league that weekend. And of course, it was very early, but since then, haven't looked right on the mound. Ironically, they get the Pitcher of the Week award this week, which is kind of a sick twist of fate. But either way, don't have the conference wins. Maybe if you go on around the Big 12 tournament, but again, I don't value that until the committee tells me to value that.
Yeah. And then last but not least, another team where it feels like the window's pretty much closed at this point, the Baylor Bears.
Yeah. Baylor in a worse boat than Kansas State, where at least you can look at Kansas State and say, well, they scheduled tough, as did Baylor. But even then, we keep saying with Baylor all year long, win the big one, win the big one. When are you going to win the big one? UCF could have been that big one if you go and win the series. Instead, it did not go well at all for Baylor. They did win one, which is better than winning 0, as it turns out. But either way, they're behind the 8 ball and a little bit more. And I'm sure we'll get into the disposition of the Baylor baseball program a little bit later on, which I still think is in a good spot. But either way, not this year for Mitch Thompson.
Yeah, not this year. And we will get into that series and talk about the fact that UCF won by the largest margin of victory in the Big 12 on Saturday. And that's just not a good spot to be in if you're the other team, aka Baylor. Do you think I'm going to set the over under for Big 12 teams that get into the tournament at 6.5? Are you taking the over or the under?
I'm going to take the over, but I'm going to sweat it out. I would never go over 7.5. Would never do that. So my hard number would be we're getting 6 in. So great line by Vegas Plunkett over here. But
Thank you.
I think it's going to be 7. I think TCU will have enough juice to get in. I think Arizona State is going to have enough juice to get in. But like we've said a few times over the last, 15 or so weeks, it might be politics. Maybe the Big 12 does get 2 hosts, which I have a feeling you might ask next. And on the other end of the spectrum, maybe you get 1 less team in. And that really shouldn't be how it is. And again, nobody's ever said that is how it is, but it might come down to that.
I asked Kirk Sarlos what he thought about the Big 12's tournament prospects on Sunday after they completed their sweep of Utah. And he advocated for 8 teams. He said it should be a pretty standard practice for the Big 12 to get 8 teams in the NCAA tournament. He talked about their RPI compared to other teams in the country. He talked about the competitive nature of the league. He talked about the brands in the league, which, for better or for worse, does play a factor at times in the selection committee's mind, and advocated pretty strongly that the Big 12 should always have at least 1 host and that the Big 12 should always have at least 8 teams in. And I thought that was a pretty strong. I thought that was pretty bold. Maybe we, just because of the way the Big 12 has been treated in recent years, have started to shrink in our own opinions about the Big 12. But I was digging through just some old tournament stuff yesterday as I was writing for Base 12 this morning, and 8 of the last 10 tournaments have seen at least 2 Big 12 schools host a regional, going all the way back to 2015. The other two were in the last 3 years, 2025 when nobody hosted and 2023 when one team hosted. Very interesting that so quickly the opinion of the Big 12 has seemingly just dissipated over the last 3-ish years or so. I wonder what happened around then to cause that. Can't quite remember.
Obviously, Texas, a proud baseball program, pulls a lot of weight. Their percentage has diminished, but there was a time not too long ago where 50% of all College World Series featured Texas, so that was massive. But Oklahoma does not carry that weight, so we don't want to go back and do revisionist history or anything, but you wonder how much weight they carried on top of that because they did play in the 2022 CWS Finals as a Big 12 team, but you got to wonder how much the league took a hit from a PR perspective as well, because it was very easy to say power two at that time, and maybe it still is, but this isn't a power two sport in baseball, and I would argue that there are no sports that are power two. But yeah, it's interesting on paper. It's probably easy to go with 8, but I would be curious for Kirk to argue for that 8th team right now. It's a tricky spot to be in. I think Kansas State has the talent to be an NCAA tournament team, but you do have to earn it. This isn't the SEC where talent doesn't get you through. You got to go and win the games too.
Yeah, 13 conference wins doesn't cut it for you when you're in the Big 12 like it does in the SEC, or soon to be 12, apparently, with the lobbying that we've seen over the last week or so for 12 and 18 SEC teams to make the NCAA tournament. A little crazy. This year, though, specifically, Noah, I think, and I wrote this morning, that Kansas and West Virginia are both deserving of a regional host. I think that this is, it would be pretty appropriate for both teams to be hosts. I kind of laid out teams around them that I thought would also be considered. Wrote a little bit about who I thought the 16 regional hosts should be. And the reality is, the way that I wrote it out at least, was there ended up being 7 SEC hosts. So not a small number there, almost half. 3 ACC hosts, 2 hosts from each the Big 12 and the Big 10, and 2 hosts from outside the Power 4. That excluded Oregon. It excluded USC, who does not have a quad 1 win on their resume this year, and it excluded Arkansas, who I thought, the lowest RPI of all the teams I considered at 26 and 18 total losses, just kind of moved them just slightly out of the conversation. But realistically, when you look around the country this year at the regional host possibilities, it would make sense for this to be a year where things feel a little bit more spread out.
I agree with that, especially as things like Coastal Carolina losing games continues to happen. Oregon State battling injuries and then continuing to play absolutely nobody only hurts them metrically. It doesn't help when they win games. They do go 4-0 this last week, but it feels like it's going to come down to, from a Big 12 perspective, you're fighting against Oregon State, you're fighting against Nebraska, you're fighting against Oregon, like you had mentioned, and then I forget who was the 4th team you just mentioned. The
USC and Arkansas were the two.
USC, Arkansas is the one where I get a little bit nervous for what they might be able to do. You talk about how the SEC unlocks things when they win certain games. I believe Arkansas goes at Kentucky this weekend. Don't quote me on that, but either way, it's not a daunting opponent, I don't believe. And then there are a lot of SEC fans who, again, you can question the IQ, and then also Arkansas fans who are saying things like, if we go win the series at Kentucky and then win one game in Hoover, Arkansas will absolutely host a regional. And based on the way that the committee views the SEC and certain numbers of wins in that conference, it's hard to disagree with that logic. So I'm worried that Arkansas is going to come in and take over maybe a Big 12 host site, especially if Kansas loses even another game against BYU, or if West Virginia stumbles against TCU. So when the pundits, who will remain nameless, are some of which saying things like, well, now the Big 12 might get no hosts. I don't see it that way, but I can see why you saying that out loud now opens the door, which is just gross politics and whatever you want to call it. But either way, right now I think the Big 12 is in a good spot, win games, and I think the Big 12 will have 2 hosts. But it shouldn't necessarily have to be that way. I think there's a gap between a team like Oregon and a team like West Virginia and Kansas right now, and we'll just see how the committee evaluates that. It might have been different if UCLA doesn't come back against Oregon. One game might change this whole picture, and that's why it's important for Kansas to go to Provo and win games, and West Virginia to beat a beatable TCU team who's also fighting for their life. And then again, who knows how much the Big 12 tournament actually matters, but every game matters in this league, and that's what's fun. It's not get to 13 and you're safe. It's get to 21 and then you can think about hosting.
Yeah, and you're right. Arkansas does play at Kentucky this weekend. West Virginia TCU is a situation to monitor for West Virginia's hosting hopes. And then you get down, you look around the rest of the Power Four. Nebraska's at Minnesota. So that's one to kind of monitor as Nebraska's on that hosting bubble. USC and Oregon play each other this weekend in a series, so that might help define some things a little bit. Mississippi State and Texas A&M play each other. I feel like those two teams are probably kind of already locked into regional hosts, but maybe if one of them gets swept, you could talk about throwing one of them out. But the reality is, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of stability in that, like 12 through 18 regional bubble kind of right now. Like there's a lot of fluidity left. Like you said, I think some conference tournaments matter more than others, right? Like if Arkansas goes on a run in Hoover, maybe they're more likely to be a host than if West Virginia goes on a run in Surprise. But it's all TBD. Obviously, there's a lot of baseball left to be played before any of this gets settled. But I think at this point, at this moment in the college baseball season, it makes sense for Kansas and West Virginia to both be slated as hosts, and they can either kind of play their way into that or play their way out of that.
Yep, and they were benefited. The Jayhawks were, at least by a bunch of teams, at least in the top 25, maybe not RPI and what all goes into that, but at least in the top 25 visually, a lot of teams ranked between 12 and about 20 also experienced bad weekends. Oregon did not win at UCLA. Couple other teams who have conveniently decided to leave my mind, A&M and Mississippi State both lost their series. I'm sure that there were several others. Ole Miss beat somebody who was in that mix. So there are enough series where things have gone tipsy topside for a lot of teams in Kansas's region. So it's not like everybody's winning and winning and winning and Kansas slipped up, so now they're out. It's still very, like you said, fluid. And it's almost win you lose, not how much you lose by or who you lose to at this point.
Yeah, I agree with that. One note that I have on the run sheet that I forgot to mention when we were talking about Big 12 bubble teams is the fact that quite a few ACC bubble teams kind of got knocked around this past weekend. Clemson, Pitt, NC State all lost their series. I believe Virginia Tech lost a midweek game that was hysterical from an RPI standpoint. I didn't actually write that down. That might open the door, right? As all these things don't happen in a vacuum, that might open the door for another Big 12 team to kind of slip in, and maybe that's how they get 7, is by the ACC also getting 7 or 8 instead of 8 or 9. Last thing before we jump into weekend in review here, we both kind of dropped in some notes on the run sheet this morning, I suppose. And I believe we both kind of put player of the year ? Next to a couple different guys. So I wanted to get your finalists. Like if you were the Big 12 committee for selecting all the end of year awards and you were narrowing down at this point, who would your top 3 player of the year candidates be for the Big 12?
Well, my top 3 are kind of 3 different player profiles in the sense that number 1 is Landon Hairston, and I'm not ranking them necessarily, but it just feels convenient to lead off with him. Hairston's been the guy all year. You talk a month ago, who's winning the Big 12 Player of the Year? Landon Hairston. Who might win the Golden Spikes? Landon Hairston. And he's cooled off a little bit over since then, but still his numbers speak for themselves. He, again, might still win the National Player of the Year. He's up there with Tag Davis at Louisville, and then you can ask yourself, how much does it matter that he's not making the tournament? And we can maybe get in the weeds with some of these guys in terms of value as well. And then Colin Ritchie, who's been on a tremendous heater the last 3 weeks or so, and it's been really good all season long too. So it's not just a when you show up, but he's been pretty consistent all year long, carrying that Oklahoma State offense. And then Gavin Kelly. And this one feels a little bit more like an emergence, but at the same time, consistency all year, and now you're playing really, really well, stands out. He, to me, gets more of the MVP vote than the true player of the year. But I've tweeted a few times now, and I know what I say about Brock Thompson as well, so we're going to ignore that. But Gavin Kelly might have 2027 Big 12 Player of the Year locked up already, which is quite the statement to make, because in theory, Landon Hairston will be back in the Big 12 next season. Now, I say in theory because you never know with college sports, but at this moment, Landon Hairston's back, Gavin Kelly is back, Colin Ritchie is maybe going to be going on LinkedIn or playing professional baseball. I think he's a redshirt senior at this point, but either way, 2/3 of my guys are back next season, which is great for the league, great for college baseball.
If Colin Ritchie's going on LinkedIn, it's to do what Fernando Mendoza did and update with his professional sports team of choice. I like those three. And at this point, I think I would go with the same three. I have a really hard time leaving Quentin Coates out of that conversation, though, just for what he's meant to Cincinnati this year. He has hit a couple cold patches along the way, but still second in the Big 12 in home runs, tied with Hairston. They're both 2 home runs now behind Colin Ritchie, who, like you said, has been on an absolute heater. But where does Quentin Coates fall into this mix? Does it matter that Cincinnati's sitting in 7th and not higher up in the Big 12 standings to you? Because, I mean, all of these other teams are ahead of Cincinnati. But think of where Cincinnati would be without Quentin Coates at this point.
Yeah. That's really the question is it most valuable or is it best? Is it the most gaudy numbers? Because RBIs are also a number, and that matters on who's in base in front of you. So how much does that matter? And Coates was obviously, for the first month of the year, raking in the Big 12 Player of the Week awards and making national headlines. The boogeyman of baseball, people don't forget. So that's valuable. And you look at a guy like Antoine John, who won the Big 12 Pitcher of the Year last year for Houston, who was the either last or second to last team in the Big 12 tournament. So it's not just a look at you won the league and you're the best player on the best team. Here you go. I like the concept of thinking of those guys who, where would they be without this guy? And I appreciate that line of thinking because I said it with Trent Pratt, with the BYU's head coach, that he should be in consideration for the league's skipper award. And I don't think that that's how it'll go. But either way, I'd listen to arguments on why he should compete. So I like the nod to Quentin Coates as a candidate.
BYU did lose 2 of 3 to Texas Tech this weekend, so that might damage the Coach of the Year award a little bit.
Roll the clip. I said that even if they get swept, I would still listen. So we're actually a game ahead of schedule here.
Okay. All right. Well, in that case, let's go ahead and jump in, but we're not going to start with BYU Texas Tech. We will get to that one here in a second, though. We're starting at the Hog in Lawrence, Kansas, where the Jayhawks got swept on their own field by West Virginia. I wrote on the run sheet, West Virginia disrespects Kansas and the Hog. Not by anything that they did verbally, just by the way that they played baseball. And then to rule Kansas in their own house on Sunday afternoon on Mother's Day of all days feels a little disrespectful. Feels a little gritty. Feels like West Virginia kind of reclaimed their mojo this weekend.
Well, if it matters at all, if we're going to bring holidays and milestones into it, today is Steve Saban's birthday. So if that cancels anything out about the Mother's Day disrespect, it was actually just a birthday present to their head coach. So that washes out. But I was on hand for the first 2 games of this series, and everybody, at least in my head, nobody's actually said this to me, but everybody likes to say, oh, you go to Kansas every week. Yeah, because it's convenient. But this does end my run of 6 weeks in a row of seeing the Jayhawks. I will not see them this week. I hope to see them in a regional at home, ideally. But either way, I was on hand, and I was very impressed by West Virginia immediately. I was texting you things during the infield and things of, crazy things happening during BP. And I was like, oh my God, West Virginia's here to play. And we've been talking about how much we love West Virginia since before the season started. So it was kind of a wet dream, for lack of a better term, that could come to my mind any quicker than that. But Max Yale set the tone right away on Friday on the mound. And when I saw Kansas play in the midweek against Creighton, which they came to me for that, so that was nice. But their offense looked off first the last 7 innings of that contest, and the Blue Jays won that one. And then the Mountaineers continued to do the same thing. They kept the Kansas offense at bay, a lot of soft contact, 9 strikeouts for Yale. He threw a complete game, and he was in the dugout telling his coach, this is my effing game, not coming out of it. And he didn't have that mentality. He's not an emotional guy. He's not somebody who's going to go rah-rah in between, getting a strikeout or walking back to the dugout, but he's just a business-like mindset kind of a guy, and that carries over to the rest of the team. This was no bat flip. This was no yell in your face. There's always a little bit of chippiness when the Jayhawk dugout gets going, but they largely kept that dugout quiet. And I was very impressed with the way that they carried themselves all weekend. This is one where you can watch West Virginia on TV, you can watch highlights, but until you see the way that they carry themselves, it stands out. And I tweeted this. It reminded me of one team I've seen earlier this year, and that was the UCLA Bruins. They conveniently played TCU that weekend when I saw them. And the way Kansas looked also reminded me of TCU. They just looked dejected, can't solve the problem. You can't look at it and necessarily go what the exact problem is because pitching was getting them over. Vaguely was pretty good on Friday, hung with Yale for quite a while. Mason Cook was pretty good on Saturday, but just West Virginia timely hitting. The base running is disgusting. Armani Guzman is such a star. Gavin Kelly is tremendous. They're playing as good a baseball as anybody in the country right now, I would argue. And I'm kind of just speaking in hyperbole when I talk about these guys. I could not be thinking more highly of the West Virginia Mountaineers than after seeing them for the first 2 days. And at first I was upset. We all love our mothers in our lives, but I thought, man, I really wish I could be here for game 3 of the series, but turns out I had already seen game 3 of the series in the form of games 1 and 2 because West Virginia didn't skip a beat, and they went ahead and swept a very good Kansas team who you hope can rebound to address the first 30 minutes of tonight's episode. But West Virginia looks really, really good. They should be in the conversation, do whatever they want this postseason.
Yeah, and it feels like they're getting hot at the right time, right? Yale was banged up a little bit, but I thought this weekend with his performance, I think he probably locked up pitcher of the year in the Big 12 this season. I don't know who it would be other than him really at this point. Maybe there's a metric out there that would tell us different, but in everything that I've done, Max Yale has been at the top of the list. So, and not by a small margin, almost by as much of a margin in pitchers as Landon Harrison has been in the hitters category. So I think Max Yale probably locked that up this weekend as one of multiple pitchers in the Big 12 that threw a complete game, right? He got co-pitcher of the week this week with another guy who threw a complete game. And there was a third guy who threw a complete game who didn't get any midweek or didn't get any weekly recognition from the league. And I watched that guy throw live. It was pretty dang good in Lance Davis at TCU. But he only struck out 4 compared to 15 and 13. And so I think that's probably where the separator was. Yeah, this was a really big weekend for West Virginia. And like I've said in other series this season, I think this said more about West Virginia than it did about Kansas. Frankly, I think we know what Kansas is. We watched them win 25 of 27 games. And for a stretch this season, my one concern would be, did they peak a little too soon? Right? Can they find that mojo again going into this last weekend? Can they find that mojo again and surprise and just kind of get to the tournament as a host? Maybe not a national seed anymore after the sweep, but can you still be one of the top 16 teams? Can you host? Because I think when they, as we've seen with the SEC for a billion years now, hosting is the best path to Omaha. It's such a significant advantage. And I think Kansas, like I said on Big 12 radio last week, I think Kansas has legitimate Omaha capabilities. Now they just about how the path kind of lays out for them at this point. Where did my notes go? What am I looking at here? Yeah, 4 losses in a row is tough because, you come into this weekend and you say, all right, well, they're up 4 games on West Virginia. If they win 1, they've probably got the regular season title locked up. They lose all 3. Now they're only 1 game ahead of West Virginia. They're on the road while West Virginia's at home this weekend. You just never know. You never know what could happen. But we'll be glued to both of those series, I'm sure. The 2 teams that are right behind West Virginia, though, 2 games behind them, in fact, Arizona State and UCF. Arizona State lost a series at home to Oklahoma State this weekend. And man, I am getting kind of tired of watching the Sun Devils ruin really good outings from Cole Carlone. Like the guy went 7 2/3. He struck out 10. He was phenomenal. And then a 6-run 9th inning for Oklahoma State, where Arizona State dropped multiple balls in the air, just ruined the night for the Sun Devils. And Oklahoma State wins that game. They win on Saturday before Dominic Smaldino hits 3 of his 5 home runs over the weekend on Mother's Day to salvage that thing for the Sun Devils. But Oklahoma State, man, they're a train rolling down the tracks right now.
Yeah, that was one that I kind of rolled the dice in the pick'em, which is again all that matters here. Even though I've been in fourth place for the better part of the season, if not the entire thing. But either way, as I closed the gap, I thought Oklahoma State is my chance to catch up, and they played well enough. And that game on Friday that you had just mentioned was insane to tune into because I a group chat I'm in was kind of saying like, "Oh my God, Oklahoma State, how are you going to blow this game?" And I thought, "Oh, great, there goes ASU. They won game one. All right, I'm already done in the pick'em." And then I kind of tuned it in as I walked into my hotel room and was putting some things away and getting ready to go to sleep. And all of a sudden, it's like, wait a minute, Oklahoma State is going to have a chance to tie this game, if not take the lead. And crazy ninth inning, they walked Colin Ritchie, which I had no idea was possible. Did not know that that could be done.
Listen,
And then Campbell Smithwick ties the game up, and Oklahoma State rallies a little bit more to go and win the game. But crazy one on Friday, and it rolled into Saturday. Mario Pesca coming in. I like his role in the bullpen.
yeah,
I didn't know how I would feel about that because it feels like their entire weekend rotation is now a setup man and a closer, and now it's Ethan Lund and whoever else they can get in to fill that rotation. But I like how it's been working for him, and then you would have not liked to win on Sunday, but 105 degrees, nobody was there. I mean, what more can you ask of Oklahoma State, who is really one of the hotter teams in the country right now, and like we said, kind of approaching that hosting conversation.
yeah, hot as a baseball team is in the country, not as hot as the surface of the sun or the actual physical desert that they played in on Sunday. Home field advantage is real for Arizona State when they play day games. Maybe they should do that more. Since nobody shows up anyways, right? Might as well. Dominic Smaldino. So we've talked a lot about the depth around Landon Harrison in this roster, in this lineup. Smaldino obviously had a great weekend. Dean Toigo, another one of those guys. New Contrades. Brody Briggs has turned into a really serviceable catcher for Arizona State as well, and a good bat at the plate. Here's a fact though that I did not realize about Arizona State until I saw the aforementioned George Lund tweet it this weekend. Cole Klecker, former Horned Frog turned Sun Devil this year, has a 2.35 ERA at home this season. Not a 2.35 ERA on the road, but a 2.35 ERA at home. And holy cow, right? Like you think about the depth of this Arizona State team, the potency of the offense, the pitching, all of the above. It is just crazy to me that we're looking at this team and saying, are they going to make the NCAA tournament? Like a 48 RPI is really, really the biggest thing putting them at risk right now, frankly. 17-10 in the Big 12 is good. If they were in the SEC with 17 wins, they'd be a national seed. But, different conversation for a different day, I suppose. Yeah, this is a ball club that it feels like, just having watched them all year, that they kind of check every box of being, oh yeah, they're going to be a high 2 seed. They're going to give someone a lot of problems in a regional. And the narrative around them is nothing but, God, it would be really weird not to watch Landon Harrison play in the NCAA tournament this year.
Yeah, they absolutely deserve to be in that picture. If the eye test means anything, which we all know it really doesn't, but this series would have been nice for the Sun Devils. And every time they get hot, you talk about their series at UCF last weekend where, all right, these guys look really good, 2 seed on lock. And then they go and they just do something a little ridiculous, like blow the lead against Oklahoma State and play a rather uninspiring series and get bailed out in a sense with a 3-homer day. Just kind of the way it's been for Arizona State. And that doesn't bode well for what you actually do when you reach the NCAA tournament. Sometimes people forget that it's not just getting in, but it's also finding a way to play well. And they haven't really shown us that they're capable of doing that for an extended period of time. It wouldn't surprise anybody if ASU won a regional. I think it would surprise us both if they won a super regional.
Yeah, that's fair. Unless the offense just went absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Just get to
Right
the ace
matchup.
early. Yeah, right matchup. I think it could happen, but yeah. Especially, I could see them getting through a regional just based on offense. If they dropped a regional game, though, I think that's where maybe the wheels maybe come off the wagon a little bit. Speaking of wheels coming off the wagon, Utah gets swept in Fort Worth this weekend. It was an uphill battle for the Utes coming into Fort Worth. They have not been a very good road team in conference play this year, although they did just come off of a series win in Provo. little bit of a different situation, rivalry weekend against BYU, those sorts of things do play a factor. But my biggest takeaway from the Utes in Fort Worth, I was on the radio for all three of these games, was they pitched really well. I mean, TCU's offense has had its ups and downs this year. We've seen them struggle at times. I was impressed by not only Coulter McAnally, but Peyton Risky behind him was great on Saturday. Seth Graham Pippen on Sunday threw 5 1/3 really solid innings, and so I was impressed by Utah's pitching, surprised at the lack of production from Utah's offense, frankly, almost as surprised as I was at the lack of production of TCU's offense. But really, this just turned into a full weekend of pitchers kind of getting to do whatever they wanted. Lance Davis threw a complete game. TCU threw four pitchers combined for a 3-hitter shutout on Friday night with Tommy Lepore, Trevor Baumler, Mason Brassfield, and Tanner Seguspie going. Seguspie got 2 saves on the way. It was pitcher heavy all weekend in Fort Worth.
Yeah, TCU, they're doing it again, where they go and they play really well for a weekend, and now they're going to face the real challenge in Morgantown this weekend, and you're going to have to hit against West Virginia a little bit better than they have really all year long. But like we've seen kind of emerge, this rotation is really fun to watch with Lance Davis going the complete game. Maybe the strikeout stuff isn't there, but Tommy Lepore is back, working his way back to full time. Hopefully he's there at some point. You don't want to overstretch him out or anything like that. And then Zach James has been really fun as well. So I like the potential of what they could do if they do reach a regional, but it might be winning games 2-1 like they did this weekend, as opposed to what we thought going into the year, where you get Sawyer Stroh-Snyder, who still, like you wrote about, heated up just a little bit. But even then, the offense, it doesn't bode well for when you go to Morgantown, and that place is going to be rowdy. It's going to be a place where you have to be able to stay in a game against an offense that they won't pour it on you. West Virginia will not score a million runs, but they will be selective in the way that they do score runs, and that can be a challenge for a pitching staff that maybe isn't the deepest in the world, but the top is really, really good for TCU.
Yeah, they're not. I mean, they're not going to go to Morgantown and win the series scoring only 10 runs like they did this weekend, right? It's just not going to happen. That's the second time this year that TCU has managed only 10 runs in a weekend series this weekend. And then when Arizona came to Fort Worth and TCU ended up losing that series, despite the fact that they scored more runs over the course of the series than Arizona. Really just odd season all the way around for the Horned Frogs. And you're right. They've had a lot of success at moments where you expected a lot of success, sweeping Texas Tech, sweeping Utah, those kinds of, sweeping Houston, those kinds of situations. 23-5 at home this year as they close out their time at Lupton this season. But it's been a struggle on the road against really good teams. Going into this weekend, they were only 3-7 against top 5 teams in the Big 12 this year, right? And that includes a win over Kansas in the midweek that doesn't count for Big 12 purposes. So you take out the non-conference game against Kansas, they're 2-7 against the top 5 teams in the Big 12 this year that they've played, which are Arizona State, UCF, and Oklahoma State. So really successful against teams below them in the standings, minimal success against teams above them in the standings at this point for TCU. Whether that plays a factor when they go on the road to West Virginia, I don't know, probably will. But we'll see. We'll see here in just a couple days. TCU needs it, though. TCU needs at least one. I think in order to really feel good about their tournament chances, they need to get at least one. Utah, not going to make the NCAA tournament. Pretty solidly in the Big 12 tournament, though, which I had a chance to talk to Coach Henderson on Sunday during BP for the Utes. What a joy to talk to him. Talk about a college baseball lifer. The guy just rocks. And we just sat and talked ball for about 15, 20 minutes. Got a little bit of it on the record. That'll be posted over to Base 12 on Tuesday. But great dude. And he's just so excited for these guys to be able to play a little bit more baseball after the regular season, to get them out to surprise. He's excited about the fan opportunities for Utah fans being a little bit closer to home than the tournament has in previous years. Hopefully Utes show up for this squad because, they've had a really productive season by their standards. And hopefully they can continue to kind of build that program in the right direction.
Yeah. Utah and BYU, they aren't the story of the Big 12, but it's a story that can't be forgotten, is the the growth that both of those programs have enjoyed this year. But before we move on from TCU, Jamie, the people have to know: are you going to be going to Morgantown this weekend?
I will not be going to Morgantown this weekend. I know we had both talked about it.
You were going to pick me
Look,
up on the way.
I was going to pick you up on the way. We do have that recorded and published for the public to see. I will be in Surprise for the entirety of the Big 12 tournament. We booked all that stuff today, and then I will be out of town the following week. And I could not justify 3 straight weekends away from my children. So it would technically be 4 straight weekends away from my children. So
this sounds like an RPI cancellation.
It is an RBI cancellation for the sake of my marriage at this point. But we will be glued to the benefit of watching from home. I love being at baseball games, and I would always prefer to be at baseball games. But the benefit of watching from home is I feel like I can actually pay attention to other things that are happening. I had the opportunity to be color on the radio all weekend for TCU Utah, and I feel like I went into Sunday night when I typically write my weekend notebook, and I was like, I don't know that I watched hardly any other baseball in the Big 12 this weekend outside of a little bit of Oklahoma State, Arizona State, a little bit of West Virginia, Kansas. Like the rest of the league just kind of escaped me this weekend. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity this week. But as we move on here, let's talk about UCF and Baylor, because UCF comes in 8-0 win on Friday, 19-3 win on Saturday, and they're winning on Sunday before Baylor makes a late surge to take that game and avoid the sweep. How impressive is it to you that the Knights keep doing all of this while losing more and more pitching? Chris Sosnowski didn't pitch this weekend. Matt Saucer didn't pitch this weekend. I think I saw someone tweet that they're down 7 arms right now. That's crazy to me.
Well, it helps when you're getting, a million runs on Saturday, 19 runs, and only having to play 7 innings as a result. So that helps when you don't have to play 9 innings one day. You might have seen the downfall of their pitching staff a little bit on Sunday there, but we've seen them be pressed a little bit before. Braden Smith has not pitched since Morgantown. That's put a strain on the pitching staff. So I always say the upside of that is you get better for it. You let more guys get more innings, and you feel the outcome of that later on in the year. UCF is a team that I think is getting slept on nationally. Team that we saw can hit the cover off the ball, and the more guys that can collect strikes for them, that's only going to help them even more when they're maybe in a Tallahassee regional, a Gainesville regional, and they sneak up on the host team there, as they've been known to do. But UCF's offense can win them just about any game that they put themselves in, and we've seen them struggle with the long ball at times. This was not the case in Waco this weekend. John Smith, I think, has 13 home runs on the year now. Andrew Williamson is capable of leaving the yard at any point. And then it was Diamaz Ross who decided to have his best weekend of the season this far with 9 RBIs against Baylor. So this offense can be explosive. Even Lodis got in on the action a little bit with a 3-run homer. So they've got depth in that lineup, and now they have depth on the mound as well. I'll even raise my hand and say I'm not as high on UCF as I probably should be. My attention is fully on the West Virginia, cocaine, call what you want, the Kool-Aid. But give me some of that UCF, and credit to them, because this is a Baylor team that, again, we keep challenging them. I don't know how often they play the flyover league in the locker room, but we keep waiting for Baylor to win the big series, and they've had some big wins in terms of series wins against teams that they should beat this season. And this is a team that we talked about maybe being on the bubble. So this wasn't Baylor mailing it in by any chance. This was Baylor's best shot, and UCF went ahead and beat them 19-3 on Saturday. That says a lot.
Yeah, that's the largest margin of victory for any Big 12 team in conference play this season. Second most runs scored in a Big 12 game this season. The Knights with 19 runs there on Saturday. And I wrote it again this week. I sound like a dang broken record when it comes to Baylor at this point, but it's just like they're almost there, right? They're almost there. Now the question will be, how long until we get there, right? Kid in the back seat, Dad, are we there yet? And the answer is no, but maybe we're an hour away, maybe we're 2 hours away in this long journey to seeing Baylor actually kind of reclaim some of their old glory. I still think Mitch Thompson's the right guy to do it. I know we had a chance to sit down and talk with him. I think his vision works for a school like Baylor with how he wants to build the roster, with what he wants to do in the transfer portal versus developing high school players. It feels like a good fit at an institution like Baylor, which for the TCU fans who listen to this are going to kill me. It's very similar in a lot of ways to TCU. Maybe baseball is scaled a little differently, but you guys want to bring in high school talent, develop it locally, supplement with the portal. Like the strategies are pretty similar there when it comes to baseball. TCU getting a different echelon of kid right now. That's not necessarily something that's going to last forever. And Baylor's got a couple pretty good freshmen, one of whom, Brady Janusek, could very well be Big 12 freshman of the year if it's not Enzo and Felice, who I know you are still madly in love with.
Well, I was wise enough to, and we'll call it wise and not so much just coaches telling me who to put on the list. But I was wise enough to include both Janusek and Lodis on my Big 12 Freshman of the Year pick heading into the year. So I was glad that I had them both on the team. I did pick Infelice to win the award, but when you're robbing home runs like Janusek did on Friday, that stands out as well.
It sure does. Defense matters, folks. Defense matters. Speaking of defense matters, Cincinnati played some really good defense against Kansas State at times up in Manhattan this weekend. And pitching wise, stifled what has been a really potent Kansas State offense to the tune of, I believe, Kansas State only scored 10 runs. I need to double check that. I might be wrong. I might be thinking of a different series.
10 runs.
And, that's low for Kansas State. You mentioned it earlier. It feels a little bit like a crime that they're finally pitching well and they still managed to lose a series because the offense doesn't show up. But Cincinnati needed that this weekend. They needed 2 of 3 to kind of keep pace with the top quarter of the league, to boost their bubble resume. And Quentin Coates with the big swing. Nate Taylor kind of did his thing. It just felt like, okay, yeah, all systems are a go right now for the Bearcats.
And Logan Knight contributing to that was big as well. He's a guy that he was injured a few weeks ago and has been kind of hit or miss for them. And then it was Blue on Sunday who got roughed up a little bit. But even then, I think that the Bearcats have their rotation solved, which wasn't a given a handful of weeks ago. And that helps when your offense wasn't the greatest in the world. We've seen Cincinnati hit the ball better too. You mentioned K-State's pitching, the kind of cruel joke that the Wildcats now have their staff in a really good spot with Lincoln Sheffield, James Guyette. But outside of that, Cincinnati just looked fine. And that's all you had to do in Manhattan. I'm interested to see how they'll look the last week of the regular season here as they try and maybe work their way towards that hosting position. Unlikely, but at worst case, shore up a 2 seed. And this is a team that's played a lot of baseball against good teams. We mentioned at the beginning of the year how much time they spent in the South. They beat Auburn this year. Auburn's looking like a top 5 team in the country. That was just a midweek, which the SEC will say doesn't mean anything, but we know it does mean something. And I'm excited to see what Cincinnati looks like in the Big 12 tournament, because last year they looked really good. They went on a run when they were able to get in that controlled environment a little bit. They were a different team then, but I like Cincinnati. And Quentin Coates heating up, even better.
Absolutely. Quentin Coates heating up, pitching heating up, rest of the offense doing the kind of standard Bishop ball, executing really well. Yeah, that's a team that you just don't want to mess with. They've shown that they can beat really good programs when you're giving them a pretty good shot.
And I should add the defense of Derek Pitts. Shout out to him.
Yeah, phenomenal.
Somebody's watching. Somebody's watching, Derek. That's what you tweeted. I'm glad somebody's watching. Well, somebody's watching.
Somebody's watching the game. Hopefully, Derek Pitts is watching the Flyover League. Shout out to Derek Pitts. We could say in an alternative universe that we named the Flyover League after Derek Pitts with the way he soared out there in right field all weekend long in Manhattan. Kansas State plummeting, right? 9-18 now, I believe, in Big 12 play. 10-17 in Big 12 play this year. 27-24 overall. Not going to make the tournament unless they win the Big 12 tournament. We've been texting a little bit this season about, how secure is the situation in Kansas State right now. I mean, they're coming off of, my take is that they're coming off of back-to-back tournament appearances for the first time in program history. So maybe there's a little bit more grace than there would be otherwise. But just your thoughts on the state of things in Kansas State right now. We've talked about other teams that are kind of low in the standings and how we don't feel too overly concerned about them. Are you concerned about Kansas State?
Well, on one hand, like you allude to, this was a team that was a few outs away from Omaha a few years ago. They took Virginia on the ropes. They won the Fayetteville Regional, which Big 12 teams love to do. But then they were that close to reaching the College World Series with Dante Culpepper a few years ago, guys like that. And then you saw the new era. Dave Kennedy has been a tremendous player. The offense has never been in question under Pete Hughes, outside of maybe this weekend, which is a total one-off. But the pitching and the decisions around the pitching staff have been interesting the last few years. And K-State fans are absolutely frustrated with that aspect of things right now. Maybe there's a change in that department. Maybe it's the way you recruit. Maybe it's the way you use guys. I don't know the answers. There's a reason that you and I are sitting right here talking about it instead of in a dugout talking about it on weekends. But I think Pete Hughes certainly feels a little bit of pressure to figure it out because we've seen what K-State can look like when they're at their best. And it feels like when other teams are at their best, K-State is not at that level. They backed into the NCAA tournament last year. You could argue. I remember asking Pete Hughes about his thoughts of being on the bubble, and he was very upset about that premise. We're not a bubble team. The discussion's obscene. And then they were a 3 seed, one of the last teams in the tournament, proving to be a bubble team. Here they are on the wrong side of the bubble, it appears, this year. Maybe there is a glimmer of hope if they go on a run in the Big 12 tournament, maybe don't win it. But at this point, it looks like they do have to win it, like you said. So that's a tough spot to be for a K-State team that, on paper, one of the best lineups in the league. And you hate to say it, but when healthy, one of the better pitching staffs in the league as well. I remember being very high on K-State this fall, and in a way, I still am because I know the potential of this group, but they just haven't played up to it.
Yeah, losing Carson Liggett and Dante Lewis is bigger than I think people have acknowledged, and I don't think I've acknowledged it much on the show here. But losing your Saturday guy and your key reliever, who could be your Friday guy if you really wanted him to be, in Carson Liggett,
And your starting center fielder and Dante Lewis potentially as well.
Yeah, you're right. Like, yeah, losing a two-way player like that is really, really tough and hard to overcome. And they've definitely seen the dings from that this season. Uh, Texas Tech hosts BYU, takes 2 of 3. This is where I want to talk about the model for a moment, because the model took Texas Tech this week, Noah, and I looked at the model dead in its eyes and said, "You are insane. I'm going BYU. Give me BYU." And then, yeah, Texas Tech pitchers duel win on Friday, shockingly, got drubbed by BYU on Saturday, and you thought, oh, okay, the Cougars figured it out. And then just an absolute fireworks show from the Texas Tech offense on Sunday to win that game 15-11. Logan Hughes earns co-player of the week award, his co-player of the week award for his performance. I think he had 2 home runs, maybe 3 on the weekend. And Texas Tech rights the ship for a brief moment and now sits 1 game ahead of Arizona for that final spot in the Big 12 tournament.
Yeah, and that's big because Arizona, we broke down the dichotomy of it last week, as Arizona is kind of like a minor league team right now, punching to just get at bats and more reps. It's kind of like a team vying for a bowl game just for the extra practices. That's where Arizona's at right now. And Texas Tech is still trying to find an identity. And what does that really matter when you back into the conference tournament? But this is a BYU team that maybe they had an outside shot at the NCAA tournament. Maybe they had to get really, really hot to do that. But either way, a couple weeks ago they were in that picture. So this is a solid BYU team, especially one at home who doesn't find ways to lose there. Or was this in Lubbock? Was this in Lubbock?
It was in Lubbock, yeah.
Yeah. So what do I know? On the road. That's why they were But either way, Connor Schaus, I think, has been one of the more underrated players in the league. Definitely one of the more underrated transfers in the league this year. When he's been on, Texas Tech has been on as well. And that's a guy that is a two-way player in his own right, kind of similar to TP Wentworth for Oklahoma State. And he's out for the year with an injury. But either way, Connor's been a fun piece for that offense, and that was somebody I took note of early on in Arlington. But either way, there's still a lot of questions surrounding the Texas Tech program on what's going to look like next season. What does NIL look like? Our guy, if you want to call him that, I would never, but I'll let you. Micah Butel was on hand in Lubbock for I think it was the Thursday game of this series, and he feels there's a lot of confidence that Tim Tadlock's not going anywhere. And other people will agree with that, other people won't. It's an interesting situation, and that it begs the question of how good can that job be if it does open when every program in Lubbock is winning except for the baseball program, and here they are winning a series.
So here's what I can tell you about the situation in Lubbock from a coaching perspective is I believe Tim Tadlock is now on a 3-year rolling contract, right? So the lifetime contract is no more, but they will take a look at the end of every year. Hey, are we gonna tack on a third year again, right? And so it will be a 3-year rolling contract until they decide that it won't be a 3-year rolling contract. And as I was doing the bare minimum amount of research possible for my pitch that, hey, more than one Big 12 team should host this year. When I was going through the last 10 years and looking at all the Big 12 teams that hosted, I think Texas Tech was a host 5 times and a national seed 4 times, right? I mean, this is a team with some legitimate history when it comes to college baseball. And there's a realistic path to getting back to that in this era of college athletics with the way, like you said, every other program on that campus is winning and at the very least, competitive with the top half of the league. So, yeah, I think there's a path there. I think that we've started to hear Tim Tadlock talk about NIL and rev share a little bit differently this season, especially the last month or so, seeming more open to it, seeming like he kind of gets it at this point. Like, hey, this is really just the way that the winds are going now. And so, yeah, I don't necessarily think that the next week and a half are make or break for Tim Tadlock to try and keep his job. I think that there are a lot of folks in Lubbock that still really like him. There are a lot of folks in Lubbock who recognize what he's done for the institution and for the baseball program over the years. And there are a lot of guys that would like to see him kind of get back to that a little bit, and maybe just having some of those background conversations about what funding can look like, what we need to do differently from a GM and roster management perspective, right? Like, those are fixable things realistically for whoever's the head coach. And if they want it to continue to be Tim Tadlock, and if Tim Tadlock wants to continue to be there, I think they'll figure that out.
Yeah, I would think so. Just given the way that Cody Campbell likes the league to run through Lubbock, and right now the league in baseball does not run through Lubbock.
It's going to run past Lubbock as people travel out to Surprise, but other than that, speaking of Surprise, Houston takes 2 of 3 from Arizona in Tucson. Man, Noah, Houston's won 2 Big 12 series all season. One is at Arizona and one was at Texas Tech. I don't get it. I don't get this team at all. That's my recap of Houston, Arizona. I don't understand what happened.
Yeah, no, that's a fair assessment. I think it's a product of where Arizona's at. It's they're getting reps for everybody, and in this case, Smith Bailey goes down with an injury. They announced that he's going to be shut down for the rest of the year. Probably the wise move, whether that's seriously injured or not, just to err on the side of caution for the last couple weeks of the season for the Wildcats. And if they play like they did against Houston, it'll be sooner rather than later that season ends. Houston, not much to play for. So you wonder what Todd Whitting has up his sleeve as far as motivation is still left in the tank for a group that is, I believe, eliminated from the Big 12 tournament with that Sunday loss. They might have had a chance to get back in, if I'm remembering correctly, when they won the first 2 games of that series. But after that, still the young guys look pretty good. Blake Fields continues his strong season as a freshman, and you wonder who's going to leave the program, what it might look like this year, especially if there's a change in leadership, like many speculate that there will be. But I don't know. Arizona, at what point do you get a little bit concerned about things? It's a weird series, very well said, but one that certainly fell under the radar in the Big 12 this weekend because the meaning wasn't there. When there are other conferences where you're saying, yeah, this one's going to decide who wins the league, and then this one's going to decide who comes in second or third. This one wasn't that case, and all it did was hurt Arizona's chances of making the Big 12 tournament, and you kind of want to see them there. It's the home team a little bit, a team that gets more reps for their young guys. The fans will be there, and Houston wanted to play spoiler, I guess. Not much more to it.
So Houston can still make the Big 12 tournament.
Okay, wow.
They are 3 games behind Texas Tech and 2 games behind Arizona in the standings. They have to sweep this weekend and hope that Texas Tech and Arizona both get swept. That'll put them into a tie with Texas Tech for 12th, and they have the head-to-head tiebreaker over Texas Tech because they won that series. So, still mathematically possible for Houston to end up in Surprise. Do I think that is the realistic way that things are going to go? No, I don't. And we'll talk about why here in a moment. But yeah, nobody is officially eliminated from the Big 12 tournament, and we are heading into the final weekend of the season, which is kind of cool.
This is a different league, Jamie.
It just means something. I don't know. It means something. Let's go ahead and move on. Yeah. Let's go ahead and move into midweek schedule. It's pretty thin this week, as we kind of discussed already. A lot of Big 12 teams have stopped scheduling midweek games this late in the season. UCF did the horrific thing and canceled against Bethune-Cookman. That game will not be played. Death penalty for everyone involved. How dare they do that? But the 4 midweek games that there are: Utah Tech at Utah, Oklahoma State at Oral Roberts, road midweek game at this point in the year. What are you doing, Josh Holiday? Rice at Houston, and Utah Valley at BYU. What stands out about those 4 games?
Well, there's 2 that kind of draw my eye. The Rice at Houston, because Rice is actually a good team. I know that we've gotten used to Rice being kind of, oh man, I wish Rice was good again. They're kind of on the cusp of that under David Pierce in year 1. I don't know if they're going to win the American. I believe they're in second right now. We'll see if they reach the NCAA tournament or not. But as far as Houston, again, it doesn't really mean much for them. But Rice is just a team that maybe you slept on last year, and that's okay. But now it's not okay anymore. And then Oklahoma State and Oral Roberts. That's Oral Roberts, who is dominating the Summit League, which you could talk about the strength of that conference, but that's what you have come to expect from Oral Roberts. Whereas Oklahoma State is hotter than the sun right now. So I'm going to go as far to say that's an underrated game nationally. Just the concept of those 2 teams both playing really good baseball right now.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'm looking forward to the Rice-Houston matchup as well, just because that's always been a really fun matchup. And as a guy who's from Texas growing up, like I remember like the Lance Berkman Rice years, and I've always kind of wanted to see Rice get back to that. And maybe just maybe they can start to sneak up and win some more baseball games and be a little bit of a nuisance again. I think it'd be harder for them to do that in this era of college athletics than it was previously, but still doable. And then moving into the weekend schedule here, Noah, we've got a couple really interesting matchups, and I want to set the table here a little bit by talking about a couple tiebreaker scenarios that are currently on the table when it comes to the Big 12 standings that are going to be really important for seeding purposes. So we've already talked about kind of that battle for the last spot between Tech, Arizona, and potentially Houston. But right now, if you look at the way that the Big 12 standings are set up, Oklahoma State and TCU are in a tie for 5th. Oklahoma State obviously has the head-to-head win for sweeping the Horned Frogs in that series. So they are in 5th. TCU is in 6th. TCU is 1 game ahead of Cincinnati, who is in 7th. And the reason that that's important is because, as you know, the top 6 seeds in the Big 12 don't have to play until Thursday of tournament week. So they essentially get that double bye all the way to Thursday. The 7th seed has to play on Wednesday. So for teams like TCU and Cincinnati, who maybe you have some reliable arms, maybe not as many as you'd like to have at this point in the year, getting that Thursday starting time instead of Friday or instead of Wednesday starting time is probably pretty important to your ability to make a run in the Big 12 tournament. And for TCU's perspective, your ability to move on to that 2 seed line, Cincinnati to move into the fringe host conversation, right? A lot on the line here. Right now, if those 2 teams were tied, they did not play head to head. So there's no head to head tiebreaker. It would go to common opponent. Now, I think people look at the common opponent tiebreaker in the Big 12 and say, okay, they just kind of math up all of their common opponents and see who had the better win percentage. That is not the tiebreaker. The tiebreaker is win percentage against the highest team in the standings that both teams played. So it's 1 series, and for TCU and Cincinnati, that common opponent is UCF. Cincinnati beat UCF this year. TCU lost to UCF this year. So Cincinnati technically holds the tiebreaker over TCU going into the final weekend for that 6th spot in the standings. Cincinnati hosts Texas Tech this weekend. We've already talked about TCU having to go on the road to West Virginia. So TCU's got a 1-game lead over Cincy going into this weekend. They don't want to be in that tiebreaker scenario. So TCU probably is looking at this weekend thinking, we've probably got to try really hard to get 2 from West Virginia just to make like that way Cincinnati has to sweep Texas Tech to force a tie, which not out of the realm of possibility, but all of a sudden Tech's showing a little bit of life, especially with the offense. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then Arizona State and UCF are currently tied for 3rd place in the league. Much less interesting because these two teams played head to head. Arizona State won that series. So Arizona State right now would be the 3 seed. UCF would be the 4 seed. Now.
That's no, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I've just been talking.
I was just going to say it's some interesting diagnoses. I have not popped the hood like you have. And the overarching problem is too many teams have double buys, and that 6 is too many. If we're going to give 6 double buys, then how about we give 2 quadruple buys or however many that let's make it a little bit more equitable. Like there's no way that the team who wins the league and the team who comes in 6 should have the same amount of buys, but every league does conference tournaments different at this point, and I can't keep track of the rules. So good on you.
Which basketball league is the one that does just the 2-pronged bracket where the top 2 seeds get the bye all the way to the semifinals?
I think it might be it's whatever league Gonzaga's in, isn't it?
I have no idea. But
okay,
I think the Big 12 should.
Or the Horizon, one of those 2.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to Google it, but we'll just go with the WAC or the Horizon. The Big 12 maybe should just do that, right? Just say, hey, we're starting these games on Sunday night. Get out to Arizona quickly after your Saturday series. We're starting on Sunday night. We're just running it, playing seven games or 7 days worth of baseball, 2 games a day. We're just going to knock 2 teams off starting Sunday night all the way to Saturday. I like that. I don't like that for people who have to cover the Big 12, but I like that for, right now, Kansas and West Virginia wouldn't have to play until Friday.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty good.
It all goes back to this is a different league.
That's right. No other qualifiers other than it's just a different league.
Wait until we should be getting any minute now the email about the playing surface for this year's baseball tournament.
I'm ready for the glass mound. My body is ready for it. Could you imagine making Max Yale and Cole Carlone throw on a glass mound?
Different league.
And they would opt out so damn fast and be like, yeah, you know what? I think we're good. I think we're good here.
RPI.
Yeah, RIP, more like that for their elbows. All right, moving on to the weekend schedule here. Texas Tech at Cincinnati, Kansas State at UCF, TCU at West Virginia, Arizona at Oklahoma State, Arizona State at Houston, Kansas at Baylor. No, sorry, pardon me. Kansas at BYU and Baylor at Utah. Which one of those series stands out to you? Which ones are you going to be paying the most attention to?
Well, the thing that stands out to me the most is that outside of Oklahoma State, they're doing that thing again where nobody plays near me. So I'm kind of just sitting at home the last weekend of the year. Frankly, none of these stand out that much to me because it feels like I want 1 versus 2 at this time of year. I want 3 versus 2. I want 4 versus 1, whatever it guys playing, I don't know, chicken against each other. But TCU West Virginia stands out as maybe the most impactful for the league standings. You just mentioned the possibility of West Virginia winning the league, and then also TCU being in the top 6 versus number 7 with Cincinnati. Outside of that, it's a lot of, hey, who's going to win, who's going to lose here and there, and maybe guys are going back to the dugout and saying, hey, anybody have the score update in Orlando right now? And it's a lot of tiebreaker weekend almost.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also going to be locked in on TCU West Virginia and Texas Tech Cincinnati by proxy. I'm really interested in Baylor and Utah. I did not mention it, but Baylor is right now 1 game up on Utah in the standing. It's for 9th and 10th, right? So it's not like there's some huge deal breaker there because both of those seeds play on Tuesday of the Big 12 tournament. But as you vie for seeding, would you rather play, would you rather be the 9 seed or the 10 seed? Well, I think, the 9 seed would play Texas Tech and the 10 seed would play Kansas State. So, which one of those teams do you want day 1 of the Big 12 tournament? There's still a little bit to play for. They're just kind of jockeying for position. And then, if you're Utah, you can say, yeah, we finished top 8 in the Big 12 a year after missing the Big 12 tournament altogether. Like, look at the progress that we're making under Gary Henderson, right? And same thing for Baylor. Like, hey, 2 years ago we weren't even in the tournament, and now we're finishing in the top 8, right? Like, it's an opportunity to show progress and a little bit of growth for the donors, for the administration, for whoever you're needing to show that to at this point. So that's another series that I think I'll be keeping an eye on.
I'll go even further with jockeying. Is I don't know what the game times look like, but if you can tell me that I can play at 7 o'clock in Arizona instead of 1 o'clock, I will play for 7 o'clock. Funny how that works out. So I don't know what that looks like. I don't even know if there are times attached right now. That might be a thing that they reveal when games are set. But either way, yeah, give me night games. That matters in the Big 12 basketball tournament. But interesting concept when it's 100 degrees.
Absolutely. I will be driving out to Arizona again. It's the second pilgrimage out west this year for me. And I can tell you that I will not be getting there for the 4 o'clock game on Tuesday to start things off, but I will be there for the 8 o'clock game on Tuesday. Right. So maybe
you're jockeying for position there.
I'm jockeying for not getting up at 1 o'clock in the morning and starting my drive. So I will be getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and starting my drive like I do typically when I get out there. But yeah, look, man, we made it to the final weekend of college baseball's regular season. What a treat it has been to chat with you about the Big 12 every single week this season. It's been an absolute blast. I'm looking forward to continuing to do this into conference tournament time, into NCAA tournament time. And here's to hoping we still have Big 12 teams to talk about when everything kind of wraps up in Omaha this year.
It does beg the question, Jamie, if TCU does not reach Omaha, but West Virginia does, is Jamie Plunkett in Omaha?
We'll just have to wait and see.
Wow.
We'll just have to wait and see.
Real mascot reveal there. Wow.
Absolute cliffhanger. And up next on 24. All right. God, what a dated reference that was at the hour 21 minute mark of this show. Folks, that's going to do it for this episode of the Flyover League. We will be back next week to talk about the Big 12 tournament. Maybe some other content coming up next week, as well as I'll be out in Surprise talking to coaches and players. Noah will be via the internet, the miracle of the internet, also in Surprise, Arizona, in some ways, in spirit as well. But until then, we will talk to you next time.